I don't typically pay attention to the English side of Weiss Schwarz nearly as much as I do the Japanese side, but this is such a hot topic recently that I figured I'd give some input on it. I want to first talk about this card. This is Rune 00 from the second set of To Love Ru. It gives 1k to all copies of a specific 1-0 Kyoko that basically nobody plays, but the important part of this card is its second ability. When this is front attacked, you may pay 1 and bounce this card back to your hand. If you do, choose up to one of the previously mentioned 1-0 Kyoko from your hand and place it on stage in this card's former slot as the new defending character. Now what's so important about this card? In the context of To Love Ru, this card is a yellow character with both alien and transformation traits, which meant that you could splash it into a red alien deck to color fix for Darkness Plan, or just throw it into Yami Mikan. But more importantly is, it's a pay 1+1. You pay 1 stock in order to return the rune to your hand, and you don't actually lose any cards. This makes it a decently efficient early game play, allowing you to maintain your hand size while still keeping up offensive pressure. At the same time, it can be used to play around the opponent's on-reverse abilities, since it will bounce itself back and render your opponent's on-reverse ability useless. This makes the card useful in the mid and late game as well as in the early game. Now let's talk about the main topic of today's video. As I'm sure many of you are aware, Gorilla Grodd into Batman Infiltration is the hot topic of discussion right now when it comes to Batman Ninja. For those of you who don't know what this is about, let me give you a quick explanation. Gorilla Grodd is a 002k with the following ability. When this is front attacked, you may pay 1 and bounce this card back to your hand. If you do, choose up to 1 Batman Infiltration from your hand and place it on stage in this card's former slot as the new defending character. Sounds familiar, right? So this card can call out a 1065 from your hand when it gets front attacked. But it can also call out a 3-2 healer. I guess someone on the card design team thought it would be a neat idea to give a 3-2 healer from the demo deck the same name as the 1-0 from the booster set. So basically, some people are concerned about playing against this card. Oh my gosh, what do I do about the 0-0? If I try to kill it, my opponent can get a free 3-2 healer on the board at level 0 and I'm just gonna insta-lose. As a solution to this issue, many people are advocating that you should just side attack it. Unfortunately, your opponent gets to keep the Grodd, but you're dealing the same amount of damage that you would have dealt from fronting it, and they might have a 3-2 healer stuck in their hand, assuming they even had it in their hand in the first place. Eventually, when you start playing level 1 characters, your opponent, the Batman player, is going to be put into a position where they have to either front with the Grodd or risk dealing 0 damage with a side attack. If you read the title of the video, you'll notice that my stance on Gorilla Grodd is that it's good against bad players. Specifically, I'm referring to players that don't know what Grodd does or what Grodd can potentially call out from your hand. So they just front attack and you get, best case scenario, boom, 3-2 healer at level 0, and you get to win one of your 3 lanes for free for the next 3 or 4 turns, in addition to having a 2-soul beater. Worst case for the Batman player is they don't have the 3-2 in hand, and they pay 1 stock to bounce the Grodd back to their hand, and it basically just plays the same role as the 0-0 Rune, which isn't that bad to begin with. Quick tangent. In Weiss, there are certain effects that we say are able to punish good players. One such effect is stock swap. If your opponent's deck is super compressed and they have a lot of clean stock, you can ruin their day by stock swapping them. Take all of their nice clean stock, put it into their waiting room, and replace it with a bunch of climaxes. This type of ability is much more useful against better players who are able to manage their zones more efficiently, keeping their existing stock clean, managing their deck state well, and refreshing with good compression. Now back to Batman. Who's to say you can't just play the Grodd and not play any Infiltration Batmans? In this case, it's literally a 0-0 Rune with 500 more base power, except your opponent has no idea whether or not you're actually playing any Batman Infiltration, assuming you're playing a blind matchup where neither player knows what the opponent's playing. In this case, if you happen to get matched up against a good player, one that's in the know about Grodd and what he does and what he can put onto the board, they might try to play around the Grodd and side attack it. Your Grodd just turned from a pay 1+1 into a free +1, and this can potentially happen turn after turn because your opponent still doesn't know whether or not you're running Batman Infiltration, and your opponent is playing in fear of that 3-2 Batman that's sitting in your pile of extras back at home, giving you free +1 after +1 not even being in your deck. It's like having a free runner, except it doesn't need to run to survive, or a coin flip bouncer that doesn't need to top check a level 1 or higher, and it doesn't even give your opponent an extra soul from the direct attack like a runner or bouncer would. This is why I consider Gorilla Grodd to fall into the category of cards that become better if your opponent is better. The information that they have absorbed from interacting with other players and discussing the card and how to counteract it is actually being used against them and giving the Batman player potential advantage. So what is the advantage to not playing any copies of Batman Infiltration in your deck? For me, the largest advantage comes from not having to dedicate any deck slots to those Batmans. They're not exactly the best cards. The 1-0 Batman has, in my opinion, one of the worst oversized demerits in the game. It's unable to attack at all if you don't have 2 back row characters, in addition to having another downside on top of that. The 3-2 Batman, even though it's a healer, doesn't do anything else. Those healer slots could be dedicated towards more effective healers, like Catwoman, whose buff effect can help your finishers such as Red Hood or the Batman TD restand. In order to consistently open with a Batman Infiltration, to potentially punish the opposing player for front attacking, you would obviously want to run more copies so that you can have it in your opening hand easily, not to mention also having to open with the Gorilla Grodd itself in your hand. But is it really worth to play those slots when you can just play better cards? So we need to ask ourselves a couple questions. Is this card worth running? Is this card worth discussing to the extent that we have done in this video? Personally, I think this card is very worth running, just based on the fact that this card could potentially be living for free. At worst, this card has the effect of the 0-0 Rune, where you pay 1 and bounce it back to your hand when it gets front attacked. At best, your opponent's going to be siding this card for several turns. It's better than any runner, any bouncer that's available in any other set, if we're just going by that ability by itself, and you can still use it as a reverse denial tool during the late game. So yeah, I do think this card is worth running, and I do think that the discussion that we've had here today is very important in highlighting the different options that you have with this card. Because some people will want to play Gorilla Grodd with the Batman Infiltration pieces so that they can try to meme on their opponent. And other players may run this card alone without the Batman Infiltrations and try to use the strategies that I talked about earlier. And it's this variation in deck building and these mind games that I think are going to make the Batman Ninja matchup a little bit more exciting for both the Batman Ninja player and the person that is playing against Batman Ninja, because honestly, Batman Ninja has a lot of vanilla cards, and maybe this is the little bit of spice that Batman Ninja needed. But was it the spice that they deserved? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What do you think of Gorilla Grodd? Should you run the 1-0? Should you run the 3-2? Should you run both? Until next time, this has been Shizukatz. See ya!